Hey everyone, this is Rod Santomassimo with the Massimo Show. And well, be prepared to get blown away about brand. It's much deeper than you think with our special guest, Mr. Bill Ellis, brand architect, but so much more. Hi, this is Rod Santomassimo, and welcome to the Massimo Show. The objective of the Massimo Show is to share how you can maximize your personal, professional margin. That's right. Let's make more money in less time. Let's turn chaos into clarity, confusion into confidence, and income into real wealth. Along with sharing my insight on how I grew a multi-million-dollar professional business, we're going to bring you the expert advice from a variety of authors, consultants, and thought leaders who will provide the tools you need to maximize your own personal and professional margin. Welcome to the Massimo Show. Bill, welcome to the Massimo Show.
Hey, Rod, thank you so much. It's truly a pleasure and a privilege to be on your show. I'm looking forward to a great conversation.
Well, I'm excited because this week you're in the U.S.,
Yes.
So we get a better internet connection probably, and many other weeks you're in Dubai. So I got to start off right there saying, Bill, what's that all about, spending half your time in the U.S., half the time in Dubai?
Well, it's a great question and one I get quite often. It is me embracing what I call a God wink. 8.5 years ago, I met a woman in South Florida at a conference that Bob Berg was holding called the Go Giver Retreat. And she came in from Dubai. I'm from the U.S. We ended up realizing that there was something magical between us. We started dating. We've since been married. And we realized that she is in Dubai and has been for 25 years and has a very successful business that she has started and runs. And I'm in St. Louis with my business, but more importantly, a personal connection, my twin granddaughters. And we've just realized that we have a tremendous connection so that until things change, we are going to make the best of what's some people consider a long distance relationship.
That's fantastic. We've been so fortunate to have Bob Berg as a guest on the Massimo Show. Incredible. So I understand the Go Giver approach. I understand you're a Go Giver coach. If you haven't read Go Giver, you need to read the Go Giver. You need to learn more about Bill first. So Bill, let's go back, and I always do this, to the young Bill. Where did you grow up? And think back to when you were in high school. What was life like, and what were you passionate about?
Great question. So I grew up any number of places. I was the fourth of 5 children, an Army officer. So we traveled quite a bit. I showed up in Philadelphia and stayed there for 6 months, but then add to that Georgia, California, Germany, Texas, Mississippi, California again. And finally, when my father retired, he went back to his home of New Orleans. My mother is also a Louisianian. She was born south of New Orleans in Bayou country. So my life and my influence was built around moving quite a bit, a good influence of the military life as a dependent, and a lot of influence of Louisiana culture. So by the time my father had retired, he was also an oral surgeon. So he had retired and gone to teach at the LSU School of Dentistry, was at the time and still is in New Orleans. So that's where I finally got to high school. And frankly, when I was in high school, what I was most focused on was realizing I was going to be able to stay in one place for some time. I was focused on realizing that I can make friends that aren't going to leave in a year, or I'm not going to leave in a year. And beyond that, pretty much, I did not have big dreams or big ideas when I was in high school. I was just happy to be there, interested in doing the best I could playing football, trying to find the right girlfriend, and real basic teenage guy stuff.
Okay, I understand. So take me out and dance a little bit. And many of our listeners had corporate jobs, and they said, I want to do something on my own. And again, you've done that journey. I've done the journey. But let's get to the beginning of the journey. So what was your first professional job, career? And tell us a little bit about that and why.
Well, the first job I had for any length of time was actually one that I learned a lot in, and it was working at what at the time was called national supermarkets. So I did everything from stock clerk to overnight work to the customer service desk and cleaning out the incinerators with shovel and shirts and pants that I'd never wear again. So I pretty much knew that wasn't a path that I wanted to do. But when I got to the point of getting out of university, I thought that my path would be in the world of financial area, whatever that was. So when I graduated, I went to work for a bank, the Bank of New Orleans. And at that time, I met my first wife, and we again had a spark, and we decided to get married. And it was a small bank. And at the time, you could not work at the bank if you were in a relationship, much less married. She had a career in banking. I realized it wasn't for me. So I moved from banking to beer. So I stayed in the bees, but I got a job at Anheuser-Busch, which at the time, the New Orleans distributor was owned by Anheuser-Busch. So it was a company, it was one of 12 company-owned distributors. And I worked in New Orleans in sales for 3 years, give or take. And during that time, I had a chance to, a couple of times, to come to St. Louis, where I now live, and contribute in some areas of marketing planning. That led to me being offered a job to come to St. Louis in the marketing department, which I accepted in a heartbeat. So we moved from New Orleans to St. Louis, and I started a career in what is called brand management, which is the heart and soul of marketing at Anheuser-Busch, even to this day. It was a path that I hadn't really anticipated, but it was something that kind of was presented to me, and in hindsight couldn't have been happier, because that really connected with what I liked and what I wanted to do.
So, Bill, let me ask you, there's so many thoughts, and even in grad school, when I went to grad school, there was a definition of brand. So what is brand?
Well, it's a question that I've spent a lot of years trying to explain my views on, which is a little bit difficult. And sometimes I feel I'm beating my head against the wall. But, so let me take a step backward and start with the word branding. So when I talk to people about branding, they oftentimes, more often than not, people think of a logo, like the beautiful logo for Massimo right behind your head there. And that's fine. That's part of branding. That's the tangible part of branding. But the heart of branding is your brand. And your brand is not your logo. Your brand is, what is the value that you provide to those that you want to serve? And importantly, does it matter to them? Does it pass the so what test, as I call it, right? So if I'm doing anything, is if I'm a coach and I want to coach you on how to better stack marshmallows, and I'm passionate about it, and I feel that's my purpose, that's great. But does anyone care? Does it go anywhere? And if I find out that there is a niche for that, and that it's going to be able to sustain, then I determine how do I go to my brand messaging with logo and slogans, and in this day and age, certainly a website and podcast, and however we get the message out to explain our value. So to me, it starts with, what is your value? What are you trying to deliver, and who cares?
Okay, so it's the branding is more, like you said, it's not the logo that, for our listeners, I have a logo behind me. It's not the Anheuser-Busch logo you may see in a can, although that is part of it, but it's more the values that product or service brand. Can a product have values?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And please don't get me wrong, Rod. The logo and all of the messaging is an integral part of branding. It's absolutely integral, but it's not the first step. The first step is identifying what our value is, and what service we're going to provide, service or product. And we have to make sure that's something that we believe in, something that other people believe in. But when you get to brand messaging, absolutely. And that's my point. If we develop a great looking logo and people look at it and they get an idea, they've just defined what our brand is. So yeah, the logo is critical in branding. But what we have to do is make sure that somehow, some way is an avenue, a door opening to people understanding what value they get from us. What's our value proposition? I say to you and your listeners, you're driving down the street today and you come to a traffic signal and you stop and you look off to the right and you see a big sign with 2 red circles. You're going to have a thought. And your thought's going to be, that's a Target. And whatever you think from there, big box store, you get everything you want. I love it. I hate it. It's good. It's bad. That's the consumer defining the Target brand for them. Now, say you go to the next traffic signal and you look, and there's that kind of 6-pointed almost star for the Walmart store. And you're going to look and you say, oh, Walmart, good, bad, I like it, I hate it. You're going to have thoughts, and you've just defined for yourself the brand Walmart. So here's the thing. Target and Walmart are essentially the same concept. They're big box stores where you can get virtually anything. One has an approach of, we have the lowest price you're going to ever find. And the other one has, we're going to sell you really cool stuff at an affordable price. And that's how they start to differentiate. So that's what I mean. The value that we perceive from Target versus the value we perceive from Walmart is what defines whether we're going to go to them or not. Now, there's significance to the Walmart logo, which I won't bore you with, but it has their 6 points of their 6 values. And that's how it gets into trying to communicate what that value is.
Okay, so as most of our listeners are more in the service side versus the product side, I will share with you, you want to talk about value. And one thing that our colleague Bob Berg says, of course, is that money is the echo of value. So,
right.
So to put for those who are focused on the money side, if money is an echo of value, then value is so important. And therefore, if value is important, your brand becomes everything, right? From a value side, and you mentioned the word value proposition, from a service side, so if I look at Target, right, my wife loves Target, she does. And I look at Walmart, and I think there's also good, better, and different, as you said, there's also an element of experience. Because we have an experience when we shop at Target, we have an experience when we shop at Walmart. Good, bad, and different. It might be the same, it might be different, it might be drastically different, right? So in providing a service, there's a level of experience that your clients, customers have received, but not necessarily your prospect have received. So how does brand fit in terms of experience and prospecting? How does brand fit for someone providing a service in those regards?
Okay, and that's a great question because there is some difference, but not as significant as we often think, at least in my opinion and my experience. So you talk about, I'll come back to the value versus price because that's a very key, significant point. But where I start working with people is asking the question, what's the point? Just throw that question out there and your listeners right now, answer that question to yourself. What's the point? And it's got limitless answers. But when I start to talk to people about what is your value proposition, I start with what's the point? And that question first goes to what's my point? Why am I doing what I'm doing? So what's the point starts to speak to our purpose. And then we have to ask ourselves, as I said earlier, does that purpose have relevance to anyone else out there? And if the answer is yes, then the next question, what's the point? From the perspective from a prospect or a customer, what's the point to them? How do I differentiate from the same person? I mean, how many coaches are there out there? I mean, I'm one of 100,000? So how does your service differentiate? How do you differentiate yourself from someone else providing the same service?
So from the listener standpoint, if you're a commercial real estate broker, I was trying to tell you, folks, the United States is about 8,000 of you. There is. Real estate brokers, hundreds of thousands. There are. Attorneys, hundreds of thousands. Accountants, hundreds of thousands. So that idea of it's not an easy answer, Bill, is it? It really isn't.
No, it's absolutely not. In particular, when it's the type of business, so let's talk about residential real estate, which is maybe more familiar to me. You're an individual selling typically as part of a bigger brokerage. So you not only have to say, this brokerage that I've affiliated with has this perception. Now I've got to also stand out as an individual within that brokerage house. Otherwise, why would people come to Bill versus Joe versus Sally versus Jane? So there's all these levels of differentiation. And that's where it goes back to, I think, in a service industry. What's it doing for me? I need to know that I've got a purpose that's fulfilling me, and that's my why. And I call it the purpose principle. It starts with purpose. You've heard, and I've heard, and most of your listeners have heard people say that if you find your passion, you won't work a day in your life. I call BS on that. Is passion critical? Absolutely. But you can't work your passion if it doesn't have an applicable purpose. And that purpose has to be self-fulfilling, and that purpose has to provide value.
Two things I want before we break a break. Number one, and we preach this at Massimo for those who listen to us. Look, you're always wondering why someone should hire you. And if you're affiliated with an independent contractor or even an employee with a company, there's you and then there's your company. So there's two value propositions that should be obviously synergistic, that they should be, They're absolutely different, right? So Bill mentioned the idea of a residential real estate firm. And I'll just grab it off the top of my head. Let's say Remax. I go to Remax office, there may be 40 brokers. You may want to work with Remax, but why work with Jane or Bill or Joe or Sally? It's just different. So, but when we come back, Bill's going to share these three elements of purpose. And then we're going to get to these branding pillars that Bill will share as well that you have to know about as you move forward. So we'll be right back to a short break, and we'll get back with Mr. Bill Ellis and branding and the Massimo Show. Hey, this is Rod Santomassimo with the Massimo Show. And oh boy, am I pumped. My new book, Knowing Isn't Doing, well, when it launched, it hit number one. That's right. Top selling sales book in the entire country on Amazon.com. We're so excited to share many of our proprietary Massimo methods to allow our readers to start finally building that business and the life they've always desired. To get your own copy or learn more, visit www.knowingisn'tdoing.com. Hey everyone, it's Rod Santomassimo, and we're back with Bill Ellis, brand architect, world traveler, and a man with purpose. So let's get back to that, Bill. Before we took a break, you had this purpose principle. Can you share what that is?
Yes, I can. And it's ironic because I've got 3 P's to my purpose principle, which are kind of match the fact that you've got 3 P's. And I just mentioned to you, I'd not jumped ahead in the book yet, but I look forward to getting to discovering your 3. So for me, there's an adage that if you follow your passion, you'll never work a day in your life. And as I said a moment ago, I call BS on that. Is passion critical? Absolutely. But it's nothing if we don't have a purpose. And the purpose has to fulfill ourselves, and it has to fill a need for whomever we're looking to serve. Now, once we find that we're comfortable with, our passion is our fuel. So our passion is what will keep us going in the pursuit of that purpose, both for self-fulfillment and for our customers, clients, and whomever we come in contact with. And the third P is persistence. And persistence means just don't do it once. I mean, if you want a brand that's going to be viable and growing and long-term, you have to be able to stay the course, adjust as you go, understand there's going to be some really difficult times, understand there's going to be some great times. And in either case, the phrase, this too shall pass, will come into play. So persistence is important.
Well, I didn't know that was coming. That was my late father's one of his favorite lines. Thank you for that. So I have this purpose principle. I'm passionate about something. Maybe you're passionate about accounting. Good for you, right? And so you need a purpose, though. And the purpose is, I would think, to assist others in reducing their tax obligations, therefore having more margin in their life to share, invest in things they want to invest in. I don't know what it is. But you have to bring that each and every day to make your brand and your company continue moving on a consistent cash flow, growing up and evolving. So we got this purpose principle. I love it. I love it. So passion, purpose, persistence. So let's go with these branding pillars. You're from Anheuser-Busch. Everyone knows that brand. You're on the corporate side. You're on your own now. And you, through all these years in this journey, you've built these pillars of branding. What are these? How many are there? And what are they?
Well, my work is kind of based on my own personal journey, to be honest with you, because I left Anheuser-Busch 16 or 17 years ago. I had time to reflect on what was good about that, and there was plenty of good, and I was able to work with some brilliant people and learn just a ton of great things. And there was some negativity, which had a lot to do with me, as it turns out, in hindsight. So I started to reflect on what went well and what didn't go well, and what part of me can I improve. And with that, I came up with 5 areas that I really felt that I lacked and that would make me a better person, would make me more fulfilled, and also give me more purpose to fulfill others. And those 5 are leadership, where I was not a good leader. But I mean, leadership is the art of motivating a group of people towards a common cause. And leadership is other focused. Leadership is about the people we're trying to lead. It's not about ourselves. And we can talk about more on all of these as we go, if you'd like. But the second is behavior, because behavior is tangible. Behavior can be seen, it can be heard, and or it can be felt. So our behavior is going to make a statement about our makeup, our character, and everything else before we say a word. And the thing about behavior, I mean, I heard a great line just last week, and it said, how can I believe what you're saying when I see what you're doing? And so that inconsistency is something that we have to be aware of. And my behavior didn't necessarily match. I wasn't necessarily walking the talk, as they say. The third is communication. Communication is something that for years, both in the corporate world and as on my own, I've heard people say we need more communication. When you say, what's wrong? What has to improve? We need more communication. No, we don't. No, we don't. We need better communication. We need effective communication. And there's a great quote from a guy named William White, and it's often misattributed to George Bernard Shaw. But the quote says, the great enemy of communication we find is the illusion of it. And what that means is we think we've communicated and the message hasn't gotten across. Someone thinks they've communicated to us and we've not gotten the message that they wanted to give. Communication is at the core of how do we interact with people and provide that value. So influence is the fourth pillar. And influence, a lot of people think of influence as you will do this and you will do it because I say so. And that's not influence. So back to Bob Burg, he talks about influence is a question of pull versus push. It's a question of attraction. And he talks about, can you move anything pushing a piece of rope? No. But if you pull with a piece of rope, it's going to work. So influence is important because it's a way that we can have the ability to motivate people to perform in a better way or to perform in a mutually beneficial way. It's not, how can I get you to do what I want? It's effective influence is, how do I understand your needs and match them with my needs? And that's true influence. And then the fourth element is team. I didn't necessarily stand out as a team player in my days at Anheuser-Busch, and I realized that. So Patrick Lencioni, who I'm sure you know, dozens of books that are amazing, a fantastic person when it comes to leadership. He says that if you get all the people in the organization rowing in the same direction, it would be the single biggest benefit or positive against your competition, more so than advertising, more so than any messaging, having everyone in the boat rowing in the same direction. And that's where team comes into play. And all of these five, Rod, I present them linearly because you have to, but as you all know, they all kind of combine and intertwine. What I know is that all of us can improve in at least one of these areas and probably all five. And that's what's going to help increase our value. So when you get back to value, I told you I'd come back to that in just a second, but you said, you use one of Bob's phrases, but the one that I really love that he uses is that value is the thunder to Price's lightning.
I love that. Explain the price. I think I know where you're going, but please continue.
Well, I mean, the first thing you see is the lightning. You see that, so you can see a price. But the thunder is when you get the value, when you know what it's all about. I just love that because they go hand in hand. But there's another phrase in The Go-Giver that I love, which is, you've read it, so I can use this. And if not, your readers, your listeners rather, can certainly look it up. But the mentor in The Go-Giver's name is Pindar. And the subject is Joe. And Pindar looks at Joe and says this: does it make money is not a bad question. It's just a bad first question. The first question should be, who does it serve and how? And then you know what the price is, because price is finite dollar amount. Value is something that is perceived by the person receiving it. And that's where you can make the connection. And that's where you can differentiate yourself. So we talked earlier, let me go back to what we talked about. If you're a service provider, how do you differentiate yourself? You differentiate yourself by understanding what the value is that you have and being other focused on giving value to those people and realizing that it'll come back to you in some way, shape, or form.
Phil, I have to ask you to repeat something because it's all so incredible. Go back to your lightning thunder analogy if you can.
You know, we talk about price versus value. And so think about it. If you're in any type of a thunderstorm, the first thing you see is lightning. You see that flash, and then the sound comes. You know, they're not simultaneous. It's lightning because light travels faster than sound, right? And then boom, then the thunder happens. So you might see your price first, but then the value is what's going to be the bone.
I love that analogy. To those listeners who say, you know what the problem is, like lightning, my prospects are shocked by my price, and it mutes the thunder of the value. What's the problem there?
Well, it's a matter to me of perspective. If we're starting from the point of how much money can I make, what will my price be? And then we go out and find someone and say, hey, you need to have this and here's the price. To me, we're looking at that backwards. And that's the whole premise of the Go Giver. And by the way, there's a whole series now of Go Giver books. There's 4 Go Giver books, and I recommend all of them. But the premise is real simple. We have to look at saying, what does that person need or want? And then, can I fulfill that? And can I fulfill it in a way that's going to be more gratifying to them than Bill or Joe or Sally or Jane? And how do I do that? So if you've ever gone into a store or spoken to anyone in service and they start telling you, well, this is what I do and this is how I do it, and you're going, but wait a minute, that's not what I need. Are you communicating effectively what your value is? No. Are you telling them what you do? Yes, but that's from our own perspective. What we have to do is try to develop more empathy and try to understand what our prospect needs and wants are as best we can. And then ask ourselves, can we fill that? Can we fulfill that? And if we can't, the best value we can give is to say, you know, Rod, I understand what you're saying. I understand what you need in a coach. And frankly, I'm not the person that can best deliver that to you. That's the first thing we can do to build true value. The second thing is we can say, but Sally can. So you might want to give Sally a call. Does that grow our business? Not on the spot, certainly not. But is there a good chance that person's going to recommend someone else to us that says, you know what, he didn't work out for me, but I will recommend him to you in a heartbeat? Absolutely.
Okay, I got 3 last ones for you, and they're going to go on a little bit with more of your principle here. So we're going to go first with your purpose. So Bill, what is your purpose today, and how are you working with others?
My purpose, simply put, is to help other people find their purpose, which might sound a bit odd, but it's not. Because again, based on my experience, for a lot of years in the corporate world, I didn't really understand my purpose. I had purpose, but it wasn't really fulfilling to me. And at no point was I really looking at how did it add value to others. Having gone through that and found out my purpose, which is very simply to help other people find theirs. The way I put it on a business side is making good brands better. So every person is a brand. Whether you like it or not, you are a personal brand. And if I can help people to answer the question, what's the point? Then that's fine. And I do that on a professional basis, and I do that on a personal basis. I mentor a lot of men, and I'm ready and willing to give time and help and my experience to anyone that asks.
Okay, so that was purpose. I'm going to stick with your principle here. So now I'm going to go to passion. I know you're passionate about these 2 girls somewhere in your life. So tell us about these 2 girls and what they're doing that's so incredible.
Okay, well, just to be real clear on this, they are young girls, and and my wife loves them as well. I have twin granddaughters. They just turned 9 in July. We call them the A team because it's Abigail and Audrey.
A team.
They are truly bright and brilliant and enthusiastic, and they are just amazing little human beings growing into older human beings, one day at a time. They are so filled with bewilderment and wonder and interest. They are so filled with connecting with other people. It's contagious. So I wrote a book called Women Who Won. I did that partly sparked by interest in my granddaughters and as a tribute to my mom. But for years, I wrote a weekly blog called Friday's Fearless Brand. And by the way, as a side note, be careful what you call things, because I first published my very first Friday's Fearless Brand inside a private group with other Go Giver coaches. And one of them said, so Friday, we'll be getting one every Friday. Oh, man. So they did for about 4.5 or 5 years. I'm on hiatus from that now. But what I would do every week is select a brand, be it an individual or a product or a service. I've done characters in honor of my granddaughters. So like I did Elmo once. I've done countries. I did the United Arab Emirates. But what I did was I would look at brands and say, this is what makes the brand, and this is what makes them a fearless brand. And here's how you can relate to this. You may not end up being a great celebrity or an Elon Musk, but you can take the principles that they show and the principles they worked on and build into that. So I wrote that for 4 or 5 years. And then I was asked to give a talk on branding, personal branding within business, a local bank here in St. Louis, for a group called Women on the Rise. And my first thought was, you can't really differentiate branding for women versus men necessarily. There are some different real world factors, but that sparked the idea. I'd been getting told by Bob Berg and John David Mann and my wife and others, write a book and just use your blog post. So that's when I decided, well, let me just find a common denominator and go through and find some of the women I've written about. And I wrote the book, Women Who Won. And I've dedicated that to my mother, who's deceased and has been for a long time, and my granddaughters. Dedicated it to my mom because you don't have to be a celebrity. My mom wasn't a celebrity. She was an amazing woman. She did a whole lot. And my granddaughters, I want them to have a better world. I want them to have a better chance. I want a lot of the hurdles that these other women have faced. I want my granddaughters to be able to say, I can get through them. And hopefully even men will read the book and say, me, I should maybe drop some of these hurdles.
Love it. Okay. Purpose, passion, now lastly, persistence. So to me, persistence also means doing things consistently and doing them more. So how do people get more of you? How do people contact you, learn about you? Give us some information, please.
Well, thank you for that, first of all. So I've got 2 websites. I've got brandingforresults.com and I've got brandingpillars.com. And you can email me at bill@brandingforresults.com. or bill@brandingpillars.com. I'm on Instagram as WC Ellis. I'm on Facebook as Bill Ellis. I've got Bill Ellis Brand Architect business page. Yeah, I'm pretty findable. About the only social media that I stay away from these days is Twitter. So you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, my websites, and LinkedIn, certainly LinkedIn. Yeah, LinkedIn, WC Ellis.
Okay. So folks, a lot of ways to reach out to Bill and leverage his expertise to help you build your brand, whether it be company brand, personal brand, but more importantly, purpose in this regard. So we've been honored with Bill's thoughts and leadership today. Bill, thank you so much for being a guest of the Massimo Show.
It's been a pleasure. It's a pleasure to finally meet you, at least virtually. Thank you so much for having me as your guest.
Well, folks, you know what I always say, Bill's giving you so much information to think about, but that's just knowledge, and that's nice. But as we say, knowing isn't doing. So go out there and do. Apply what you learned today and watch your business grow. Until next time, this is Rod Santomassimo with The Massimo Show. I want to thank you for listening to this version of The Massimo Show. And please go out and share this with your friends, your colleagues. Heck, share it with your dog. Just share it. And more importantly, just give me some feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. We all grow from understanding what our audience wants to hear. So until next time, this is Rod Santomassimo with The Massimo Show. Hey, this is Rod Santomassimo with the Massimo Group. And did you know over the last 12 plus years, we've worked with thousands of independent contractors, solopreneurs, and small business owners in helping them achieve the business and the life that they've always desired. To learn more how we could possibly help you achieve your goals, please visit www.massimo.coach. That's www.massimo.coach.